a speeding ticket coming in.
Not all of it.
Williams, 10 Williams, Williams. He did 2 terms of this.
Okay, do you want to get this party started?
Yep, we're ready, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is 9 o'clock, so I call this meeting to order. Welcome, council, staff, and the public. We do have quorum, so if you can please stand if able for playing of the national anthem performed by the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Okay, and at this time, I turn it over to Councillor Hildebrandt, who is going to read the land recognition statement. No, press the button.
We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is a traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Abenishinabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Councillor. At this time, before we get into the formal proceedings, this is the first meeting since Mayor Junkin's son passed away, and I would like to pass on our sincerest sympathies to the Junkin family on behalf of council staff and the residents of this community. In the interim, Marv is stepping back for a little while so he can get his thoughts together and whatever. So I will be taking on the mayor's duties for the next little while. Anyone who needs to get in touch with the mayor, my contact information is on the website. So the agenda has been circulated to all councillors. Any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda? None opposed, so that carries. So that brings us to the disclosure of pecuniary interest and nature thereof. Does anyone have anything to declare? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a delegation from Mr. Tim Nahara, status of the work of the Cannabis Control Committee, next steps, and back to you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, so Mr. Nahara, you've got the podium.
Is it on?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and good morning, residents who are with us. I'm pleased to be back before you, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and residents who are with us today. I'm Tim O'Hara, in case you don't know me, the chair of the former Cannabis Control Committee. I came before you on June 7th and asked council to receive the Cannabis Control Committee's closing memo and to implement the Redecan Community Liaison Committee agreed to by the last council, the town, Redecan, and the Ontario Land Tribunal in accordance with minutes of settlement between Redecan and the town. The Redecan Community Liaison Committee is the answer we negotiated to protect residents who continue to struggle with adverse impacts from odor released from Redecan. It relies on substantiated complaints and adverse impacts under the Ontario Environment Protection Act and does not involve the use of the 6 odor unit nasal ranger test that our bylaw team continues to use without success. In response to my request, actually I'm going to try and save some time here and go into 3. The staff report provides details on the town costs for its part in the Redecan Community Liaison Committee. So we have a staff report on the agenda. I believe it's 9.1 if it hasn't changed. And these costs are for the work of our odor professional, Mr. Phil Gerard, professional engineer and a career in odor engineering and monitoring and standards. Those costs are about $25,000 a year, as you'll see in the staff report, which is in line with what I reported to you as an estimate back on June 7th. So that's good news. The costs are low. And Mr. Gerard is with us today. Thank you, Mr. Gerard, and his ongoing interest in helping the town deal with its odor issues. The staff report also indicates that Redecan has not complied with 4 requests from our external counsel, Airden Berlis, to provide the initial documents required by the minutes of settlement, namely a description of the current odor control. I'm not going to try to do this. I hope I got a mouse. Oh, I will try. Sorry, I'm at paragraph 5. A description of the current odor control and management systems being employed by Redecan at their Foss Road site, a site plan drawing showing the location of existing buildings, building heights, and importantly, emission sources, including identification, and a contingency odor management plan to the town's satisfaction. The staff report also notes that the tribunal's interim order indicated that it may be spoken to should there be any difficulty in obtaining these documents. In light of this, I urge council to instruct our external counsel, Airden Berlis, to report Redecan's non-compliance with the minutes of settlement to the Ontario Land Tribunal and to seek their assistance as offered in the tribunal interim order. I will note there are a couple of options for our external counsel in approaching the Ontario Land Tribunal. If Redecan continues to breach our minutes of settlement following the assistance of the tribunal, then I recommend that council instruct Airden Berlis to work with the tribunal to finalize the interim order by deleting paragraphs 7 and 8 of the Schedule 2 zoning bylaw amendment contained in the interim order of August 23rd, 22, which would have granted Redecan special, specific, site-specific approvals. Paragraphs 7 and 8 are an incredibly valuable gift to Redecan, which we agreed to provide conditionally in exchange for Redecan cooperating with the full implementation of the Redecan Community Liaison Council in accordance with the detailed terms of reference already defined and fully specified in the minutes of settlement. No cooperation? I suggest to you no gift. Finally, I recommend council to instruct Aird and Burles to seek dismissal of Redecan's and CanTrust's action to quash our odorous industries nuisance bylaw, as this action has no merit, and the parties have failed to advance this action, which is blocking our ability to use the odorous industries nuisance bylaw against them. Getting a dismissal should be straightforward and inexpensive for Aird and Burles, especially given Redecan's present non-compliance with the minutes of settlement. And Aird and Burles are fully up to speed on all matters. The staff report that is included in the agenda only became available Friday. Mr. Phil Gerard is most willing to address council on the staff report so that council's properly informed and does not inadvertently make a decision which could undermine 4 years of work and investment by the previous council, including wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars of expert fees and thousands of volunteer hours by the members of the Cannabis Control Committee and residents. Speaking before you today, I wish to clear up a misunderstanding that's been propagated by staff who seem to believe that using a nasal ranger and measuring 6 odor units at the Redecan property line is the basis for substantiating a complaint. This is not the case. And this misunderstanding is clearly present in the staff report that is before you later this morning at 9.1. And it has the potential to lead you to incorrect conclusions. I've included information in my delegation here on the screen for some of you. It's the elements in blue, which are direct quotes from our odor expert, Phil Gerard. I've included this information, which comes directly from Mr. Gerard and explains what adverse impact means and what is a substantiated complaint. He is the expert and negotiated this in the minutes of settlement personally with Aird and Burles and in all our prior bylaws that have been tested through the OPA at the Ontario Land Tribunal. I'm not going to go through this. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards if you have any. It's in the delegation materials. But suffice it to say that an adverse impact, this comes from the Ontario Environmental Protection Act. This isn't something that we come up with. It's law in Ontario. And it is the impairment of the quality of the natural environment, injury or damage to property or plant life, harm or material discomfort to any person, an adverse effect on health of any person. It's loss of enjoyment, So if you have to go inside and close your windows to enjoy your property, that's an adverse impact under the Ontario Environmental Protection Act. It has nothing to do with measuring odor units. The measuring of odor units is an interim tool that we used here and we developed here where we could hit the ground running with bylaw and do something useful while we were developing these laws, which are now before us. So staff continue to promote this tool, the 6 odor unit nasal ranger test, that's been proven by our bylaw department themselves not to work. Not a single violation has been issued to Redecan, notwithstanding that very significant adverse impacts their release of odor has had and continues to have on the surrounding neighbors. It's no surprise to the Cannabis Control Committee, nor to our odor expert, that this staff-developed protocol is not producing the results as we recommended against using it. And as chair, I personally captured our concerns in the minutes of the former Cannabis Control Committee. And I'd be happy to provide those references to anybody who's interested. The Redecan CLC, the Redecan Community Liaison Committee, will solve the problem by using protocols negotiated in the minutes of settlement that do not use a nasal ranger and which are best practices in Ontario. And these best practices are already part of our odorous industries nuisance bylaw and our official plan amendment and zoning bylaws approved by the tribunal. It simply makes no sense at all to continue to use a failed 6 odor unit test that everyone knows doesn't work and that is proven by our own data our bylaw team has captured. It's time for the odor professionals to do the odor work for our town. As the staff report is not going to be presented until after I'm complete, I invite you to ask me any questions you may have on it now, as well as the next steps, the next legal steps for bringing Redecan into compliance with the minutes of settlement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nohara. I'll turn to council if any councillor has any questions or comments at this time. Yes, Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Mayor, Acting Mayor. I'm used to having John sitting right next to me. So, anyway, I just want to ask you with regards to the staff recommendation in the report. And it has to do with the recommendation that it be a working committee versus an official committee of town. I remember when we first established the Councillor Chofie was responsible and initiated and was instrumental in establishing the Cannabis Committee.
Cannabis Control Committee.
Control Committee, right on, and ensuring it was an official committee. I'd like your impression as to the working of a working group versus an official committee.
For the purpose of the Redecan Community Liaison Committee?
Correct.
Is that, okay. There may be a technical question, a municipal technical question. I'll leave that to, I want to answer first, but I'll leave that to CAO Cribbs and others. The terms of, when you create a normal committee, like the Cannabis Control Committee, you establish a terms of reference for that committee. In the staff report, there are certain recommendations towards terms of reference in the staff report that's going to follow. I need to make this point clear. The terms of reference for the Redecan Community Liaison Committee are already defined. They are in the minutes of settlement. There are the far majority of the minutes of settlement, the pages and pages of the minutes of settlement are the terms of reference for the Community Liaison Committee. So there's no new inventing here. There's no new work that needs to be done here. There's a committee structure, I'm sure. But so that would be my answer is just be careful. This isn't a new committee that, is seeking new terms of reference. This is a committee that's already, it's a Community Liaison Committee. It's already been agreed to by all the parties. It's a legal contract. And as long as you follow the minutes of settlement, I think we're golden.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Olson.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Mr. Nohara, it feels to me like we had a major advance when we got the minutes of settlement. That was a huge thing. It was expensive. We had the probably the best sorts of advice we could have, and we're moving towards a community type solution to this problem, because you can see the number of people who have an interest in it, and yourself and the committee, and how much work has gone into this, which I very much appreciate. The fact is, we should follow up on this, I think, because we said in July, I think it was, that we've been waiting, and I don't have the time frame in front of me or anything like that. But at that time, I think I said that this was gold, and we should take advantage of it. So I forgot what I was going to ask you now. But I think but I do recall in the terms of settlement the terms of reference for the committee were very carefully laid out, and we should follow that, and we will be on the side of following the terms of settlement, and the other side won't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think Councillor Olson, that's absolutely correct, and I think it's important we follow it, and the others are not, because, for example, the order to quash or nuisance bylaw, that has nothing to do with the merits of the bylaw itself. That has to do with, are we acting in good faith? Is there some other agenda? And so when we follow what we sign in contract, That's good, and the town always has. The town struck a committee, spent 4 years and major effort to do this right, hired experts to do this right, and so we should follow that. I agree. I do want to say if I may, one point on that. And this is a complex subject, this odor management in our town. When we started, we had the whole town to be worried about, the whole town. And that's tough because we had multiple emitters in the town. We had the CanTrust-Fina property, we had the Redican, we had a Micro, we had others in the town. And we were just learning about this. And so the way we started hitting the ground running was worried about all of this in the whole town. We've narrowed that hugely in the minutes of settlement that you're referring to. The Redican CLC is a 1 kilometer radius around Redican. That's the area of concern. If you haven't been there, look on Google Earth, and what you see is the Redican property, and it's an island around agriculture that within 1 kilometer north, south, east, and west abuts the start of subdivisions or of country homes. You couldn't get an easier property, an easier emitter to focus your efforts properly with the odor experts, and measure, substantiate complaints using Ontario best practices, and then maintain cooperation. So this is not the big problem that we started with. The Fina property is gone and in liquidation. Their legal non-conforming status is gone. I will make that statement. So anybody new coming in there, should they wish to establish, will have to follow the official plan amendment that will protect us. Any new people coming in will have to follow fair rules. So this is it. This is the gold. I agree, and it's a very focused problem. It's not the big problem that we were struggling with before. It's a very focused problem that we have before us.
Yes, thank you. That would be my observation as well, that it's, it takes a long time to get everything focused on one piece of paper, and now we have a judgment, and now we've got something to work with, because before we had a lot of opinions and a lot of other things. Now we've got a ruling. So.
Yeah. And if they don't comply with what they agreed to, with the minutes of settlement, then as I've urged council, we take back the the gifts. We gave them conditional gifts, meaning a site-specific approval for continuing cannabis indefinitely, regardless of whether they shut operations down or not. It goes with the lands. We gave them that. That's a big gift. And we also gave them the gift of their warehousing and office facilities. So that's paragraph 7 and 8. We gave them those gifts in exchange for cooperation. And right now they're in non-compliance on that cooperation. So if they continue, my opinion, we take those gifts back. They were conditional, and they can be in non-compliance, and then we can resurrect our odorous industries nuisance bylaw, which is easy to. We've just been, as CEO Cribbs said some time back, let sleeping dogs lie. They weren't doing anything with it. It was just a tactic. I agree. But now is time, if they're not in compliance, to bring that back. And the odorous industries nuisance bylaw, I will comment in the vein of how do we execute. It has 4 provisions, 4 active provisions for monitoring odor in that bylaw that we designed. The first 3, you make use of your odor experts, the first 3. And the 4th is the one that we've been using presently with bylaw, the 6 odor unit nasal ranger. And we added that 4th at the recommendation of staff for good reason. That 4th provision, which is the only one we've used, we haven't used the other 3, and if we need to, that's where we go. And it won't be expensive. It won't be like we saw when we sought that during COVID-19, and we sought because of labor and everything else, because we're looking at the whole town. This is a narrow, focused area that we're talking about. That's the only problem that's left in the town. But we needed that 4th. I want to be clear. I'm not shooting down the 6 odor unit nasal ranger technique. Bylaw has invested time and effort doing measurements at the property line, but it is not what defines a substantiated complaint. It was a tool that we used because we had nothing else at the time that could be easily used by bylaw. And I thank bylaw for that. I thank them for their efforts of collecting data. They've showed us with their data over 3 years it doesn't work, and their data, and I agree with them. And we knew that from the beginning. We knew it was unlikely, but it was worth a try. And so now that we've got the tools that have been tested, now it's time to use the right tools.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Councillor Olson, did you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Niznik.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just if on page 3 of 3, where it says substantiated complaint, so it mentions means odor from the Redecan site is adversely impacting a sensitive receptor located downwind. So is the sensitive receptor, is that the measure that the bylaw folks are using right now? Or
No,
what does that
no.
mean?
Sensitive
then for me?
receptor, I'll translate.
Thank
It means essentially a person, a resident, a home, the land. So I provided some information to counselors, and in there's a picture. And that picture shows Redecan, and there are houses. If you look at the map,
Yeah.
there are houses around it, subdivisions and houses on the picture. Each one of those is a sensitive receptor. The sensitive receptor is about our folks in the audience.
Okay.
They are the sensitive receptors. It could also be a daycare. It could be a business where people. It's anywhere where people, a park where people recreate. So it's really focusing on the lands where people might be negatively impacted through either loss of enjoyment or a reaction or what have you to the odor.
Thank you very much. So then, as you said, the adverse impact is certainly subjective. So I think, using the measurement tool, at least it's a factual number tool, whereas the subjective impacts, those are much more difficult to measure and to, who is going to say, okay, yes, this is having an adverse impact, this is not. So
Great question.
that's who makes that measurement and how is that data collected and how is it would be substantiated and hold up in a court, I guess, of law.
Excellent question. Thank you for that question. I'll try and answer it, but I will say if my answer is not satisfactory, please, I urge you, invite our odor expert, Mr. Phil Gerard, to council as a delegation, and he'll give you the better answers that I will try and give you now. It is intended to be subjective. It's intended to. Our Ontario law requires it and allows it. The innovation was setting up an odor unit of 6 and saying that means an adverse effect. That was innovative. That's not what the law says. There's no mention of odor units, no mention of 6 nasal ranger testing in the law. The law is adverse effects, adverse impacts, and that is done by going to the residents, visiting the sensitive receptor sites when there's a complaint. It's done by hearing their complaint. Oh, there's another neighbor on the same street who has the same complaint. It's done by understanding how odor propagates. So you had a complaint at 12 noon, I'm at your location at 12:05. What were the wind conditions? What was the humidity levels? Because odor propagates much like fog in our town. We've seen a lot of fog the last few days in our town. And if you look at fog, I see fog over here close to the ground, and then I move 100 yards down the road and I don't see it at all, or it's up in the sky. That's what odor does. So if I'm standing here where there's no fog, think of the fog as odor. If I'm standing on the ground with a measurement and the odor is up there, I can't see it like fog, I won't measure it. So what the odor experts do is they understand the propagation of odor. And that's why it's important we get the odor emission sources and we get the studies that predict propagation of odor. Those are all the initial documents we're waiting from Redecan, and those are the engineering documents that the experts rely on. So that, to answer your question finally, that's why it's not a job for a non-professional. It's not a job for bylaw. It's a job for an odor professional who can follow up efficiently, cost-effectively, and rapidly and determine, is there a substantiated complaint? And they're trusted by the courts. We're not innovating here. Odorous Industries, the Ontario Environment Protection Act, air quality, these aren't new in Ontario. These are established in Ontario, and our odor professionals know how to use those tools and know how to use them in court, if needed, if needed. The goal is not to go to court. The goal is to have a pre-agreed, substantiated complaint, 5 of them in 90 days, from professionals who talk to professionals. Redecan will have their professional, we'll have ours, professional to professional. They're the ones that came to the minutes of settlement and the detailed terms of reference specified there, and will presumably act in good faith if they come to the table.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else have any questions? Seeing none. Tim, thank you very much for your presentation. As always, very impactful and informal, so informational. So thank you again for that. And I will turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from Tim Nahar regarding the status of work on the Cannabis Control Committee and the next steps for Redecan Community Liaison Committee for information.
So all in favor of the report? So carried.
Thank you. We now have a resolution moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider a matter under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. One item, the Redecan compliance.
So probably at this time, as we've done in the past with the Cannabis Control Committee, the closed session is closed to the public. However,
We have a motion once we go in.
Okay.
Whether we're going to allow others.
okay, all right, sorry, thank you. Hey, new to the job. Okay,
Once we go in.
yeah, so all in favor of going into in camera? Okay, so carried.
So at this point, we'd ask all the gallery to leave the room.